Good evening, this is Brass Tacks. I'm Zakka Jacob. The hijab debate, which is happening currently in the Supreme Court, took a major and dramatic turn today. The Solicitor General claimed in court that this entire thing was a conspiracy by the Popular Front of India. He insisted that no girl students were wearing the hijab or insisted on wearing the hijab until late 2021. That's when the campus front got involved in this. There was also a reference to what's been happening in Iran over the last few days, where women are coming out openly and rejecting the hijab. If this can happen in a theocratic country like Iran, why cannot it happen in democratic India? But first, the story so far. All right, the big hijab debate tonight here on Brass Tacks. Here in our studios, I'm joined by Feroz Bakht Ahmed. He's former Chancellor of the Maulana Azad National Urdu University. S. Prakash, spokesperson of the Karnataka BJP, on the broadcast this evening. Maulana Ali Qadri, Islamic scholar, also on the broadcast. Shatabish Shivanna is advocate representing the hijab petitioners. Atikur Rahman, Islamic scholar, and Zakka Soman, women's rights activist, joining us. Mr. Feroz Bakht Ahmed, let me start with you. The Karnataka High Court had in this matter very clearly in its order ruled that wearing the hijab is not part of essential practice. So the petitioners going to the Supreme Court in challenge of that decision, when the court has already ruled that it's not an essential religious practice and therefore it is not mandatory that hijab needs to be worn inside an institution, whether it's a college or a school.
All right, Zakka, I think we have to rise above this element of this thing being the essential part of Islamic tenet or not, because there are 5 essential tenets of Islam like namaz, roza, zakat, hajj, all these things. Main thing is, we are studying in a school or college. The school or college says this is our dress code, or this is a writing code. All the students, they should use the blue ink for writing their exam papers or their assignments. They should not write with blue or green or something like that. So one has to follow that. The country, especially a country like India, it is not run by Sharia, right? We are not concerned about Iran. Even if Iran is run by Sharia, the way they took the life of Masha, that was horrendous, heinous, horrible, horrific, and above all, inhuman and devilish.
Okay.
I went down with the moral police regiment of Iran. And finally, having said that, Zakka, I would also add that the kind of debate which is going on in the court in favor of hijab, let me tell you, hijab has nothing to do with the education of the girls. The girls should actually say that we do not want hijab, we want class, and down with the slogan, no hijab, no kitab.
No, I also the Solicitor General Atikur Rahman today expressly saying that this entire thing came to the fore, that a few girl children in a couple of colleges in coastal Karnataka, they only insisted on wearing hijab from late 2021 onwards. And the Solicitor General's contention was, this is the Karnataka government's contention, that this was after the involvement of the Popular Front of India. So this was done for political reasons, perhaps even for nefarious reasons, but not something that the girls wanted to or insisted on. Certainly they didn't before late 2021. Atikur Rahman.
Well, Zakka, if the Solicitor General is very much true that the campus front of India is involved in this thing, we should be very much satisfied then that such radical elements, if these organizations are, only 6 girls are, towing the line of this organization out of 90 girls. If it has 96. Been a religious compulsion, all 90 girls would have demanded a hijab, but out of 90 girls, only 6 went to the court, and that too they went to the court just to tell the court that constitutionally or even religiously they should be granted this concession about the uniform, along with the color of the uniform. Is the state of India not that large enough to grant the girls to educate themselves with this minor, this thing in the uniform?
Sir, if I can make an intervention, sir, if I can make an intervention, you say, isn't the state big enough to make this concession? It's not a question of a concession or not. First of all, the argument taken by the petitioners was that this was part of a fundamental right. So, a concession can never be a fundamental right. A fundamental right is a fundamental right. You and I and Mr. Feroz Ahmed Bakht, everybody on this panel is entitled to it. Yeah, that is one part. So, it's not a concession. Secondly, the most important part is, how does the state then say, okay, we'll make a concession to one section, but we can't make a concession to another section? That is discriminatory practice. The law has to be applied equally. And if the law is that there is a uniform, and if the law is, and as per the judgment of the Karnataka High Court, this is not an essential religious practice, it has failed the ERP test, then everybody should follow that. That's why we have courts of law in this country.
Agreed. Zakka agreed. Then what about the law, the Education Act of Karnataka, which says that no rule should be made irrespective of, any of the religious arguments in it. If a student is barred on this particular aspect, that no, if your religion does not, essentially provides you for this, you cannot have it. Is this not a hindrance on the part of the students entering a education institution? This was the contention of the petitioners, lawyers in the court.
No, Shatabi Shivanna is also on the broadcast. He was one of the lawyers for the petitioner in the Karnataka High Court. Again, Mr. Shivanna, you can't have it both ways. Either the contention or the argument taken is it's an essential religious practice, therefore it should be allowed, which argument failed in the Karnataka High Court. Now you're bringing in the freedom of choice argument. The freedom of choice argument does not hold forth, and again there are multiple High Court rulings on this. Once you enter the four walls of an institution where there are uniform rules for X, Y or Z, if you're a student, these rules apply to you, whether you're Muslim or Hindu or Christian is irrespective. Mr. Shivanna.
See, it was our argument that the state passed a government order restricting Muslim girls from wearing a hijab. Now, the burden is on the state to prove that why is this restriction in place. Our contention is it's in violation of Article 19. Now, we have established our right, whether it's essential religious practice or not, we'll get into that later. Now, when there is a right, we have established our right and the government imposes a restriction on it, it is the burden of proof shifts on the government to establish as to why this restriction is being imposed. Is it against public morality? Is it against public order? These questions were posed to the government order. Our first and primary argument and submission before the Honorable High Court of Karnataka was that the government order is unsubstantiated in law because they cannot impose such a restriction on these Muslim girls.
No,
now, having said that,
Mr. Feroz Ahmed wants to respond to you. But first of all, it was not a restriction that the government order passed. What the government order passed was a certain uniformity which applied to all students. It was a dress code. It was not a restriction. If you were to appear in school or college, you have to follow this particular dress code. That's not a restriction. Secondly, Feroz Ahmed to respond.
No, by actually stating
put up your case in a very cogent manner. Let me tell you one thing. So far as you said, you gave the example of Article 25, 19, 29, whatever, right? Let me tell you one thing, that the way you argued this case, you argued it in a manner, like Sikh brethren, their pagadi, their turban, that is the essential tenet of their religion, that is allowed, right? However, except 5 tenets of Islam, this is not an essential tenet. So, I mean, your argument might not work for a long time. No, I wish you best of luck, but this is on dangling a wicket. First thing. Second thing, I'll give you the example of first Muslim judge, Fatima Bibi. Fatima Bibi let me tell you, used to wear hijab everywhere. But when Zakka, she used to come to the court of law, and whenever she used to decide cases, she was told very politely by the authorities, look here, you are a judge, so you are not to wear anything which actually, is not of secular credentials. So she did not wear her hijab in a court of law or the seat of judgment.
Okay, let me ask Zakia Soman, as somebody who has fought for women's
quickly
rights and
respond,
particularly
if I
for
may be
women's
allowed.
rights. One second, Mr. Shivan, I'm coming back to you. Zakia Soman, one of the arguments that was brought forth today in court is look at what is happening in Iran, where women are coming out in large numbers, shedding the hijab, many of them cutting their hair, in almost like a rebellion against the hijab rule. And if this can happen in a theocratic state like Iran, shouldn't democratic India be far, far ahead when it comes to women's rights and women's ability to shun regressive practices like wearing a hijab?
Yeah. So what is happening in Iran is really heartening. It's really very courageous of the women and the men, and it's very, very inspiring. You know, it's not never easy to stand up for your rights and fight, particularly when you are women and in a theocratic state. Having said that, the situation in our country is a bit different, Zakka, because Iran is a theocracy and we are a secular democracy. I am quite clear that hijab is not an essential practice of Islam, that hijab is a patriarchal imposition. I'm quite clear about that. But at the same time, I also am clear that not allowing girls entry into the classroom, barring girls from taking the examinations because they are in hijab, is also extremely wrong, and it is discriminatory. It is denying them their right to education, which is a fundamental right. And this whole issue has been hugely politicized. It has been blown out of proportion, and there has been a lot of rigidity on all sides.
Okay.
There is a lot of discussion, Zakka, about the woman's right to choose. And the woman's right to choose is very, very important. But in order that the woman is able to make an informed choice, an educated choice, she needs that, journey, the journey of education, higher education, empowerment, economic empowerment, being able to understand the world. So that a whole journey for these girls who have been denied entry into the classroom, that journey has been one stroke halted by unthinking set of, I would say, on all sides, because the parents come from a traditional conservative background, and for them it is next to impossible to beat the kind of social pressure that they are undergoing. As a result, they are denying their girls from going to school and college without hijab.
Okay.
And on the other hand, the education institution, because they call it violation of uniform, they are denying entry to the girls into the classroom. So here, who is the sufferer? The sufferer are the girls and the girls' education and the future of the community and the future of our nation.
Okay, S.
So
Prakash,
I
respond
feel
to that.
that,
While
it's
hijab may be a regressive practice, maybe even a patriarchal construct that has been imposed on women, fact is that by denying the opportunity for education, the right to education, whether it is to these 6 girls or others who have dropped out as a consequence of this verdict by the High Court, you are denying the right to education to these children, and that is as regressive as a practice of wearing hijab. S. Prakash.
Exactly.
S. Prakash, yeah.
There was no ban on hijab or anything. Government was not at all in the picture till 21 December. When these 6 students were instigated by Campus Front of India, they started wearing hijab despite knowing that it is not allowed in the classroom. From there, this controversy erupted, and it was challenged in the High Court. State government said uniform policy must be followed by one and all. It was challenged in the court. Those who challenged in the court are present in the panel. They know the court did not accept their argument. The court upheld the state government decision to enforce the uniform policy in all the schools. It was not earlier. It was not so. Some of the schools were permitting hijab inside the classroom also, even though they had a uniform policy. Some of the schools were not permitting. It is this Campus from Front of India which instigated these 6 students. are the real culprit for the today's controversy. Now the matter is in Supreme Court denying the education rights, and why should the 6 students insist for the hijab instead of attending the college or school? High Court, there's a clear direction. Status quo must be maintained. The state government
but Mr.
submission has been
Prakash,
accepted.
by the actions of these 6 students or whatever, the fact is that after the High Court verdict, more than 6 students have dropped out of going to school. This has become a hindrance for young Muslim girls to go to school, at least in certain households where their
What is
parents,
the priority?
yeah,
Their
their parents
should
are
be
insisting that they
education.
should be allowed to wear hijab. Now,
This
I'm
is
not for a
not-
moment saying that they should be given the right to wear hijab. In fact, I firmly believe it is a regressive practice, but you can't weigh that against losing an education.
No, that concern should be with the parents and
Yeah.
the students. Not they don't have that concern. They believe that being not wearing hijab is discouraging them from taking the class and
Okay.
taking the exam. They are writing their own future. Even Chief Minister, everybody appeal to them. Please think of your future. Hijab is not the issue, but the Muslim fundamentalists are encouraging them to.
Okay, I want to ask
remain stubborn.
Maulana Qadri, who's also joining us on the broadcast. Maulana Qadri, again, I keep going back to this. Let's be very, very clear about this, that hijab by no means is a progressive practice. It's a regressive practice. As Zakka said, it's a patriarchal construct. In many cases, it is forced upon the woman. So you can't have it in such a way, Maulana Qadri, कि आप एक तरफ ये आर्ग्यूमेंट भी ले लें कि ये फ्रीडम ऑफ चॉइस है, एक रिग्रेसिव प्रैक्टिस में भी इंडल्ज करने के लिए हमें फ्रीडम ऑफ चॉइस चाहिए. अगर ये प्रोग्रेसिव है तो फिर ठीक है, लेकिन अगर रिग्रेसिव है तो उसमें फ्रीडम ऑफ चॉइस का आर्ग्यूमेंट नहीं आता है, बिकॉज why should you have freedom of choice for a regressive practice? It's like saying I should have freedom of choice for committing murder.
ख़तई तौर पर फ्रीडम ऑफ चॉइस के ऊपर नहीं लूंगा, इसीलिए क्योंकि कुरान में सूरे अल-अज़ाब में इस बात का साफ साफ तौर पर जिक्र किया गया कि औरत को पर्दा करना चाहिए. तो और जो कुरान बोलेगा मुसलमान उसी पर अमल करेगा. रहा सवाल कि हमारे अपने मुल्क में, हमारे अपने देश में यहाँ पर शरई लॉ नहीं है, ना तो यहाँ पर इस्लामिक हुकूमत है, तो हम किसी तरीके से भी यहाँ पर किसी पर कोई चीज को इम्प्लीट जबरदस्ती नहीं कर सकते. रही बात कि हिंदुस्तान में कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन है, यहाँ का अपना कानून है, लेकिन मुसलमानों के लिए उनका अपना मजहब है. अब हर मजहब की अगर आप बात करेंगे तो जो भी धार्मिक होगा उसके ऊपर सख्ती के साथ अमल करेगा, जो धार्मिक नहीं होगा वो अपने हिसाब से जिंदगी जिएगा. तो ये एक व्यक्ति की आजादी की बात है. हम किसी पर लाद नहीं रहे हैं, थोप नहीं रहे हैं कि आपको हिजाब पहनना है, लाजिम है. इस्लाम जो बताता है उसको बता दिया गया है. अब अगर कोई पहनना चाहे पहने, जो ना पहनना चाहे ना पहने.
लेकिन मौलाना कादरी साहब, ये बताइए, आपको नहीं लगता कि 21वीं सदी में एक सेक्शन ऑफ पॉपुलेशन को ये कहे कि आपके चेहरे के ऊपर पर्दा लगा के आए, ये रिग्रेसिव नहीं है? हम 7th सेंचुरी 8th सेंचुरी में थोड़ी ना रह रहे हैं, हम 21वीं सदी में रह रहे हैं. अपना साइंस इतना प्रोग्रेस हो गया, टेक्नोलॉजी इतने प्रोग्रेस हो गई है, लड़कियां अब बाहर आ रहे हैं, काम कर रहे हैं, नौकरी कर रहे हैं. इनफैक्ट आवर लेबर पार्टिसिपेशन रेट इज इंक्रीजिंग एवरी ईयर. इस जमाने में ये कहना कि जनता का आधा हिस्सा जो फीमेल है वो उनके शक्ल के ऊपर पर्दा लगा के आएंगे पब्लिक प्लेसेस में, ये तो रिग्रेसिव ही है ना.
हाँ, ज़ाका एंड कादरी साहब, आपने कुरान की आयत कोट की, बिल्कुल सही कोट की. मैं एक सेकंड, मैं आपको एक कुरान की एक और आयत बता दूं. आप आलिम दीन हैं, अकाबिर हैं, अमाइद हैं. देखिए, कुरान में ये भी लिखा है ला इकराहा फिद्दीन, यानी दीन के मामले में कोई जबरदस्ती नहीं. एंड ज़किया हैज वेरी राइटली पुट इट दैट ईरान इज अ थियोक्रेटिक स्टेट, मजहबी मुल्क है, बिल्कुल ठीक है. बट आई थिंक द मर्डर, आई विल कॉल इट अ मर्डर बाय द मॉरल पुलिस ऑफ ईरान was the last straw on the camel's back as far as women in Iran are concerned. I think women in India, they should lead a movement. It should start from Bengaluru only. वो 6 लड़कियों से मैं मिला था, अब 6 नहीं, जो 96 लड़कियों में 6 जिन्होंने केस डाला था. एक लड़की ने पता है क्या कहा? कहती है कि मैं तो क्लासरूम में बैठना चाहती हूँ मगर मेरे ऊपर जबरदस्ती की जा रही है. I can't tell the name of that child, but this is what is happening.
Mo-
Zabardasti.
Maulana Qadri. जी बोलिए।
फिरोज भाई, आपको मैं बताना चाहता हूं कि मैंने अपनी गुफ्तगू के इख्तिताम में यह बात कह दी है। अपनी गुफ्तगू के इख्तिताम में मैंने बात आपको बता दी है कि हम किसी पर जोर जबरदस्ती नहीं करते हैं। इस्लाम जो रास्ता बतलाता है वो काम हमारा बताना है और सारी दुनिया के उलमा बताए हैं। अब रहा सवाल, हमारे जाका साहब मुझसे सवाल किए तो मैं बताता चलूं कि जाका साहब, कई ऐसी मुस्लिम लड़कियां हैं जो आज मल्टीनेशनल कंपनीज पे हायर पोस्ट पर है
जी,
और कई ऐसी लड़कियां हैं जो कॉल सेंटर में काम कर रही हैं, पायलट की ट्रेनिंग ले रही है। तो इसमें कोई शक नहीं है कि मुस्लिम लड़कियां कहीं पीछे हैं, बराबर वो अपना काम कर रही हैं। कई ऐसी बड़ी बड़ी हायर ऑफिशियल्स हैं जो हिजाब पहनकर अपना काम कर रही है। तो इसीलिए हम कह रहे हैं कि आप तालीम के मैदान में पीछे ना रहें, आप अपने हिजाब के साथ काम करें।
लॉन टेनिस खेलना चाहिए, उस पे क्या जवाब है?
नहीं, हालिया में फिरोज भाई आपको शायद पता होगा कि हमारी जो तेलंगाना की जो लड़की है निखत, जिसने बॉक्सिंग चैंपियनशिप जीती, उस पर भी तनकीद हुई, उसको मैंने कंडेम किया। मैंने कहा कि उसकी वो जाती जिंदगी है। और जो जहां निखत की जब बात हुई तो मैंने कहा कि रिंग में जो है वो जाकर बुर्का नहीं पहन सकती। वो जब रिंग में गई है तो वहां के रूल्स को फॉलो करेगी। मैं इतना तंग नजर इंसान नहीं हूं कि ऐसी बात करूंगा। रहा सवाल, इसको पॉलिटिक्स से मत जोड़िए, पॉलिटिक्स से दूर रखिए।
वो सेम लॉजिक ही स्कूल्स में भी कह रहे हैं ना। अगर रिंग में आप कह रहे हैं कि रिंग में आप बुर्का पहन के बॉक्सिंग नहीं कर सकते हैं, तो वो सेम लॉजिक स्कूल और कॉलेज में भी इस्तेमाल होना चाहिए, इंतजाम होना चाहिए। जहां यूनिफॉर्म का रूल है वहीं यूनिफॉर्म पहनकर ही आना चाहिए, वहां दूसरा कॉस्ट्यूम नहीं पहनना चाहिए ना। But anyway, I want to go back. I want to go back to Atikur Rahman as well as Zakka Soman and Mr. Shivanna. One of the things, Atikur Rahman, that the court contended, the High Court contended in its judgment was that it hardly needs to be stated that uniform can exclude any other apparel, not just hijab, whether it is a bhagwa scarf or a blue shawl or any piece of apparel that may have visible religious overtones. It again comes back to that argument that if you're going to allow one section of students or children to wear a particular religious clothing, then you have to allow others to wear a bhagwa shawl or a blue shawl. So the court is saying, if you're in a school, if you're inside the premises of a school, then the uniform rule applies equally to all students. It goes back to Article 14 and 15, equality before the law.
Well, then the contention should be, Zakka, that were the people who are demanding either a tilak or a bhagwa, they were practicing it earlier or not. In contention to the hijab, if they are demanding, then this is a tit for tat argument. The court, if it is believing that in the realm of liberty, the student should be permitted the same color scarf, I mean, what is the harm? And Zakka Soman has put it very rightly, that how can a state in India bar students wherein in the right to education there are so many other concessions have been granted.
Even that point I agree with Zakka. I don't have a bone to pick there. She's right that if you were to weigh, a freedom of choice or ability to wear clothing of your choice vis-a-vis denial of education, nothing should deny anyone an education. That is a fundamental baseline that I agree with Zakka Soman. But I'm asking you a different question, and this is what the court has also alluded to in its judgment. So, if it's going to be universally implemented, then no religious symbols can be worn inside a school or college which has a dress code. I mean, it comes back to, again, everyone is equal before the law. The law should apply equally to everyone. You can't be seen as making concessions to one section of students but not making concessions to another section of students.
That's a very important argument, and the court will have to give a very, very favorable opinion on it, that if the girls are demanding something which neither, provokes anybody, nor it is hindering the school uniform law, then what is the harm in granting it?
Okay.
We are awaiting with cross fingers.
Rahman Sahab, hijab is allowed everywhere. These girls who are going to the classroom, say they can wear it anywhere on the malls,
So
on the
what is
roads,
the
in
harm?
marriages, whatnot. But if the
Firoz
school
Sahab,
asks
what is
them
the harm
not to
in
wear it in the
granting it?
classroom, I think they should follow that. They should not
Sir,
spite
what
their
is the
life by
harm?
not attending the class and wearing the
Sir,
hijab.
No, but
what is the harm in
no,
granting
the
it?
harm
They are
is
not
that the
demanding
harm
it
is
a
that
tit
the
for tat.
rule then does not apply uniformly to all students. It goes against the law of the land, that the rule should apply equally to all individuals who are inside that institution. And there are, like I said, multiple High Court judgments which show that collective rights of the institution have a higher value than individual rights of individuals concerned. But Zakka Soman, I want to come back to again one more point. People who are saying that wearing of the hijab is a freedom of choice argument. I can understand if the freedom of choice argument is being made for a progressive construct. As you said in your previous answer, hijab is not a progressive construct. It is meant to bind and confine a woman, right? It is a patriarchal construct. It has been, in most cases, it is the men of the household who force the women to wear the hijab. How can you take the liberal argument that this is a freedom of choice question when the question is of wearing a regressive piece of clothing, not for a progressive ideal or an idea?
Yeah. So, yes, Zakka, what you're saying is very, very important because choice is a very complex matter. On the face of it, I can turn back and say that because there are, sections where KG going girls going to first standard, second standard are covered in head to toe hijab. So where is the question of choice? That's a little child. That child doesn't have a sense of choice in that sense. So, this whole argument about choice is a problematic argument, especially when it comes to women's choices and women being able to exercise their choices in our social realities, because our social realities, which draw heavily supposedly on religious diktats to set norms for women's behavior.
Okay.
Who is a good woman? A good
Zakka,
woman will be
Zakka,
dressed
such
in
Well,
such
okay,
and
let
such.
her finish.
something very sensible
Let
when
her
you
finish,
said-
sir. Let her
Okay.
finish.
So there is
Zakka, finish.
Let her finish.
there is so much premium in our society on who is a good woman. We have seen diktats coming from politicians against girls in jeans. As though girls in jeans is something wrong, they're doing something wrong and they're not quote unquote good girls. Similarly, in our society, in Muslim society, a good woman is supposed to be a hijabi woman. So when we have pre-constructed this idea of a
Okay.
good woman, a girl or a family which is living within a community neighborhood, where there are traditional people residing as neighbors, conservative
Okay.
elements all around. How are they how are they expected
Okay.
to sort of
Okay, Mr.
exercise their
Feroz,
choice?
final
Well
word,
said.
30
Then
seconds.
how-
after
is
that.
there
Yeah.
even a choice?
Well said, Zakka Sahaba. Let me add one thing more, just to add to what you have just said. In the beginning, or somewhere in the middle of the program, Zakka said a very sensible thing. In the matter of choice, he said if the choice is positive, or if it is something which is good, then it will be accepted. Today, these girls, they want hijab. They want to enter the class. The college says, no, it is out of dress code. Tomorrow, I am using something which might not be the cup of tea to many viewers who are looking, who are seeing this television program. Tomorrow, if some girls say, we want to come into bikini. So, matter of choice is not the right thing. Matter of, if the choice is positive, if it is progressive, then it will be accepted. But tomorrow, if you say, now this wearing a hijab is inversely proportional to coming into bikini.
Exactly.
I'm
All right.
sorry to use
I
these
got
words.
I got to wrap up. I'm
argument.
completely out of time,
Okay.
ma'am. I'm completely out of time. But I think there is one real standout as far as I'm concerned in the arguments that happened today in court. Maybe given the context, maybe given what is happening, if women of Iran and admittedly large numbers are coming out and rebelling against this patriarchal construct, this very anti-feminine and feminist construct, then why shouldn't women of India, Muslim women of India, come out and also stamp their authority? They should be allowed to cast aside such regressive practices, such regressive constructs like the hijab. Talking about regression and progression, something significant has happened for the first time in 30 years in the Kashmir Valley. Cinema theatres are functional. Back in the 80s and 90s, most of these theatres shut down because of the militancy. The terrorists also took a very hardline version of Islam propagated by Kashmiri separatists, which led them to view cinema as haram. Now, if you look at the history of Hindi cinema in particular, Bollywood in particular, there have been tens of hundreds, if not thousands of films that have been shot in Kashmir. So this whole double standard about shooting of films in Kashmir is okay, but the same content being consumed or that same movies being watched in Kashmir is somehow viewed as haram. That was the question that bogged the valley down for the last 30 years when it comes to cinema. Now, though, with the first multiplex opening in Srinagar, cinema halls opening in Shopian and Budgam, the question is, does this mark the beginning of a new normal in Kashmir?
After 3 decades, the cinemas have returned to Kashmir. On Sunday, LG Manoj Sinha kicked off 2 makeshift cinema halls cum auditoriums in militancy-affected Shopian and Pulwama. This was to wean away youth from joining subversive activities.
और ये एक लक्ष्य रखा गया है कि हर जम्मू कश्मीर के हर जिले में मिशन यूथ के अंतर्गत ये 100 सीटर सिनेमा हॉल बनाए जाएं.
The biggest beneficiaries would be students who would not only enjoy the cinemas but would also be given education through audiovisual learning.
पुलवामा में बहुत पहली बार खुला है ये सिनेमा और यहाँ पे आज एलजी मनोज सिन्हा आए थे इसकी इनॉग्रेशन करने के लिए और बहुत सारे स्कूल से हम बच्चे जमा हुए थे आज यहाँ पे. उनके साथ हमने बैठ के कुछ क्लिप्स देखी हैं. सब लोगों को यहाँ के लोगों को बहुत एक्सपोजर मिलने वाला है, वरना तो बाहर जाना पड़ता था ऐसा कुछ देखने के लिए.
लेफ्टिनेंट गवर्नर आए थे यहाँ पे और उन्होंने सिनेमा का और इनॉग्रेशन किया पुलवामा में और उनसे बात भी हुई बहुत सारों की और उनने यहाँ पे इनॉग्रेशन जब की तो बहुत अच्छा हुआ कि एक्सपोजर अब बहुत ज़्यादा बढ़ेगा.
While all the 20 districts across the Union Territory would have mini cinema halls, the biggest and the first multiplex in Kashmir would start today. The 520-seater, 3-storied multiplex is a state-of-the-art facility and is set to attract entertainment-starved valley residents. The move will also regain Bollywood's lost connection with Kashmir.
Bollywood और Kashmir का रिश्ता is very old relationship. I think the first film here was shot Barsat by Raj Kapoor. So we want to revive that. We want to revive the connection of Bollywood and Kashmir. We also want to give full entertainment to our children, to our students, to our elderly. There must be at least 50% people in this state who have not seen, in the valley, who have not seen a film in a cinema hall.
Between 2000 to 2018, many cinema owners tried to revamp 4 of the 10 cinema halls in Srinagar, but due to rising militancy, they had to lock up the facilities again.
The owners are saying that there is tremendous response. Now, one hopes and prays that this sticks and this works very well, and youngsters as well as old people, they get an opportunity to come here with their families and watch.
In Srinagar, this is Mufti Islam.
All right, I want to go across to our guests who are joining us. Syed Zafar Islam is national spokesperson of the BJP. SP Vaid is former DGP of Jammu and Kashmir. Lalit Ambardar, Kashmiri activist, and Advaita Kala, author, joining us. Let me start with SP Vaid, sir. As a former DGP, as a former top cop, for the last 30 years, you've seen how Kashmiri citizens, ordinary Kashmiri citizens, were deprived of basic entertainment in the form of cinema halls. Are you hopeful today, sir, that with the opening of the multiplex in Srinagar, the opening of cinema halls in Shopian, etc., that perhaps this is a cautious but a necessary first step towards some form of normalcy back in the valley?
Zakka, absolutely. In fact, I recall exactly 30 years back, more than 30, 31, 32 years, when I was a young SP in 1990 in Kashmir, there was I think, organization like Muslim Janwaz Force, which was behind this, and basically radical Islamic idea to target all the liquor shops, all cinema halls. They were flourishing cinema hall business in Srinagar city and other towns of Kashmir, Anantnag, Baramulla, and many other towns. But they were all targeted. I still remember how all these things were systematically targeted. And it's a very good move. How do we de-stress? We all would like to go with our family to a mall, have an ice cream, see a movie, do shopping, go to a cinema hall, see whatever entertainment movie you like. Maybe children would relax by going to the park and enjoy a small game, or some cricket or whatever small game. And I was watching for last 30 years Kashmiri boys coming to Jammu or Delhi to relax. And in fact, favorite scene in Jammu, there is a wave mall. Most of the Kashmiri boys and families will throng. And it's very heartening to see that now this is opening up in Srinagar. That too in South Kashmir, a place like Shopian and Pulwama, which were hotbeds of terrorism. And one thing I would advise is ensure sufficient security there so that no harm is done to the people who go to enjoy there. And these are the places where young boys would relax, would see whatever they would like. They even can have educational classes on that, display their talent. It has multiplex has many advantages, and I think it's a very, very welcome step. In fact, we have been thinking of doing it for last 2 decades. Fortunately, it has materialized now.
Okay, I want to ask Zafar Islam, and I'll take forward one of the points that Ved Saab made. It was back in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, that these movie halls shut. And then I think in 98, 99, 2 theatres in downtown Srinagar. One was called Neelam, the other was called Broadway. They opened barely for a few days. And some of the people, some of the moviegoers who came to watch the cinema there, they got shot dead. And within a week or so, both of those theatres shut down again, not to be opened ever since. What's the guarantee, Zafar Islam, that you can give to the people who are coming there? Because the last thing you want is that this groups of people, crowds of people who come to a multiplex turn out to be sitting ducks for the terrorists.
Well, adequate precautions are being taken. Security measures are being taken. And most important, Zakka, it is for you and for the viewers to understand that this was the demand of the ordinary Kashmiris, because they also need an outlet where they can entertain themselves. And movie theatre is something which every single individual would want to go, and perhaps it was missing, and that some of these young minds they were unnecessarily being used by the terrorist organization and radicalized them. So it's a welcome beginning that the movie theatre is being opened now. And also this is also a testimony that normalcy is getting back in the valley, because people will start demanding for things like movie theatre and all when they feel that yes, there is a normalcy around them and they can comfortably go to theatre to watch movies. And I'm sure whatever commitment what we have made, our government has made, will ensure that is there we will be able to put it in the ground and make people realize that it is important for them to lead a normal life rather than getting associated with hardliners or
Advaita Kala, Bollywood has had a romantic affair with Kashmir for a number of years now. From Barsat to Silsila, Kabhi Kabhi, and of course the latest Kashmir Files. I think tens of thousands of movies have been shot in Kashmir. But somehow watching those movies was always considered haram. This dichotomy in what the terrorists were trying to do to the people of Kashmir. That it's okay to come there and shoot films, but it's not okay to watch them.
Well, this was, of course, like you mentioned earlier, the hardline Islamist terror line that was taken, which really impinged on people's freedoms. Remember Shami Kapoor and that iconic song Jangli, that was shot in Kashmir. So the romance, the Shikara rides, the romance of Dal Lake, all of that has been an integral part of our movies going back to the 1960s. So it was really tragic that we weren't able to even show films there because of this hardline Islamist rhetoric that was prevalent. And this is an important step. Remember, I mean, we've just come out of COVID, and one of the barometers of normalcy in everyone's life, not just in a place where there is this sort of terror, specter of terror, although I now feel that we all kind of live with the specter of terror everywhere in the world, not only in India or in Kashmir or in specific areas, but certainly the barometer of normalcy was when are the movie halls opening up? Because there is something to do with doing well as human beings in this present state of modern existence that we associate with being able to do simple things like having the choice to a movie hall and what we with a bunch of people we don't know, just engaging in social life and life. That makes this so much more significant on a human level as opposed to all the other things that people want to talk about.
Lalit Ambadar, you know, you were again growing up. I'm sure that there was the specter of movies, the simple joys of life, as Advaita said. But over the last 30 years, because of this militancy which has engulfed Kashmir and the almost terrorist nature of what these guys were trying to do there, it was deprived. The people of Kashmir were deprived of it. Do you think that what is happening today is a significant marker, especially after the abrogation of Article 370? The process of normalization has been going on there for the last couple of years. And the jury, I guess, is still out whether Kashmir has come back to full normalcy. But do you see this as one significant step moving in that direction?
Zakka, with your permission, I would like to take 10 seconds because your presentation brings me that into a state of nostalgia. You talked about my college, my school days. Let me tell you, there's Kashmir. It wasn't only that. There would be hardly any Hindi movie which wouldn't have at least one song that was shot in Kashmir. That is number one. Number two, we had a very rich cinema culture in Kashmir. I recall we used to have a concession for the students, and on Friday, first show, you would only see boys and girls queuing up outside the cinema hall across the Srinagar city. I come from Srinagar. Across the Srinagar city, that was it. And you would not see even a girl in a burqa. Let me also emphasize on that. This was a kind of culture where not that Islamism, pan-Islamism inspired Physicalist was not there, but it wasn't militant. They hadn't taken to weapons. They were not targeting Hindu women. But what happened? So it's nostalgic recall. And you know, by the way, one of the definitions, one of the agendas of genocide is also to erase the memories of the survivors of genocide. Let me, through you, remind the nation and remind our perpetrators of genocide, we carry that memory, those memories with us, and Kashmir is us, and we'll come back to Kashmir and avenge what all we have lost there, and the genocide through using all the constitutional means available to us. Now about this thing. What was happening in 1990, where Kashmiri Hindus were being assaulted by the jihadis, simultaneously these things were happening, radicalization and erasing of Kashmiri culture. That cinema halls were burnt or closed, and then the parlors for the women were closed, bars were closed, and everything was brought to almost, it was like Afghanistan. By the way, I've been to Kabul. I have seen a Hindi film in Kabul where they were firing outside in the Kabul. That is also a situation where terrorism survived. In Kashmir, I tell you, I don't think, like Advaita has very rightly said, this is no barometer or a parameter for showcasing the normalcy in Kashmir. What happened on 5th of August 2019 was momentous, was historical, no denying that. In fact, I think that was a great thing. But what happened on that day? You began the process of dismantling of the Islamo-fascistic ecosystem that had been prevailing in Kashmir for the past 70 years by virtue of Article 370 and 35A, because you had almost a mini Kashmir flourishing in Kashmir. Mini Pakistan, which was totally Islamized, not the Pakistan you see. They see movies, their women go, they don't have burqa obligations there, but in Kashmir, Duktaran and Millat, you can see only her eyes. That was imposed in Kashmir. Now, look, this is part of that agenda. I take it as my what I have understanding of the jihad and global conflict jihad related. So this is the process of dismantling, one of the processes of that. But this is no way contesting, or you are not able to fight the jihad by opening the cinema halls there. Listen, Kashmiri Hindus remain on the target. The same slogan continues to reverberate through threatening letters. Even yesterday, a threat letter has been issued by the jihadis against Kashmiri Hindus.
Yeah.
So they remain on the target. Genocide of Kashmiri Hindu is continuing. So I will request the BJP representative with folded hands, please do not showcase it. Like the governor of Jammu Kashmir said only a couple of days ago, said if Kashmiri Hindus want to come back, they have to show the desire to come back. Just to come and watch a movie in a secured environment. Is that what Kashmir Jihad is all about? Is that how we are going to reverse or address genocide of Hindus?
Let Zafar respond to that. Since you asked him a question, let Zafar respond to that, and then I'll go back to SP Ved and to Advaita Kala. Yeah, Zafar.
I think everyone must understand that whatever happened in 1990 cannot be undone. Incompetent government at that point in time made it happen. Today, what is important for all of us to ignore the past, whatever happened, but look forward and address the concerns of all the Kashmiri Pandits, what they had. Our government is trying to address the concern of every single Kashmiri Pandit so that they come back to their home, where what belongs to them, and feel safe and secure in their own home and in their own environment. That is our priority. Having said that, you also have to do these things to ensure that normalcy. You cannot only bring normalcy by holding gun on someone's head.
Okay.
If that is what you are advocating, that will never happen, because you cannot bring normalcy by shooting people. You have to balance both. You have to do something where you can change the people's mind, and that is something with young mind. When as you rightly said that people used to go to cinema theater and without wearing burqa, but they're all young minds. Likewise, we want that young minds should go to cinema hall, should go to educational institutions, should play sports, but they should remain away from the radicalized forces. And that will help.
SP Ved Sahab, one of the points that you made in your first answer about how do we ensure, and from a security point of view, I guess this is going to be a bit of a task cut out, if you will. How do you ensure that there is adequate security provided to these people, that they don't end up like what happened in Neelam Theatre or in Broadway Theatre back in 1998-99? How does the security infrastructure ensure that happens every single day, every single show?
Yaka, if I recall those days, generally attacks used to be lobbing of hand grenades and incidents of indiscriminate firing on the people lined up for purchasing tickets. So these are two major threats which I think these theatres will face, particularly those coming up in South Kashmir.